In this session, it's my aim to get you better acquainted with the fingerboard by getting you to associate the different frets with actual musical notes. In fact, we've already made a start with this, as you already know which notes are used to tune up the open strings of a bass, and that the fingerboard itself is divided into semitone intervals by the frets. Personally, I think it's very important that you begin to associate frets with their notes now and make a start on learning where every single note is across the entire fingerboard. Now, this may seem a little daunting at first, yes, but please just split this learning into bite-sized chunks, and I guarantee that by increasing your knowledge bit by bit, you'll soon have the entire fingerboard learnt in absolutely no time. After all, if you're serious about playing, serious about music, and want to play with other more experienced musicians, then it's essential that you know where your notes are. Let's start by recalling the first 5 frets of the E string. If you can remember, I briefly mentioned to you these notes during our session on tuning, and I'd like to bring back some terminology used in that session that will help you to understand how musicians start to think about notes. In particular, I want to clear up the confusions that can often occur when we start referring to note names. And, if you haven't guessed it already, I'm going to talk to you about the notes that are either flat or sharp. Very soon we'll be using our basses to find and name the notes, but to start with, I think it's much easier to see and understand the concept of flat and sharp notes using the piano keyboard. As with our bass, the piano is also divided up into semitone intervals, but instead of frets, a piano has black and white keys. Now, all the white keys on a piano are what we call the natural notes. These are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and back to C again. And these natural notes played in this way creates what we call a C major scale. But as you can see, spaced in between these natural notes, we have a number of black keys. So, how do we go about naming these 5 remaining black notes? Well, we name the black notes based on their relative position to a natural note. Taking this one as an example, we can see that on either side we have the natural notes of G and A. So we'd refer to this note as a G sharp. The sharp sign basically means that it's a semitone higher than the nearest natural note. Or we can look at it the other way and call it an A flat. This time, the flat sign tells us that the note is a semitone lower than its nearest natural note. As you can see, physically it's exactly the same note, but it can be named 2 different ways depending on which way we choose to look at it. For now though, just think of sharp notes as being a semitone higher than a natural note, and flat notes as being a semitone lower. If you look at the piano again, hopefully you can see that there are 2 places on the keyboard where there isn't a flat or sharp note between the natural notes. Now, please remember that there is always only a semitone interval between the natural notes of B and C, and also between the notes E and F. Hopefully you're now beginning to grasp how we refer to note names in music. So, I think it's time we take this new knowledge and start applying it to the instrument. Okay, starting from the open E string, I'm going to go up fret by fret and tell you the note that's found on each fret. Now, I'm only going to go as far as the 12th fret, because it's here that we find the same note as that of the open string. And importantly, from the 12th fret upwards, the layout of notes just repeats itself again. See, knowing that alone immediately reduces what you'll have to remember by half. Now, Before you start counting up your frets, the 12th fret is really easy to find on the bass, as it's usually marked with 2 dot markers on the fingerboard or on the side of the neck. So, to recap, if this is an E, then this note here is also an E. Now, although both positions create the same note, it's their pitch that's different. Hear how one's low and the other's high. In music, we refer to this interval, or the physical space between the notes, as an octave. Okay, work with me now as I show you the notes on the fingerboard. Obviously, we have the open E, and remembering what we've just learnt from the example on the piano, E goes up a semitone, which is the same as moving up a fret, to the next natural note, which is an F. Next is F sharp, or G flat, and remember this is the same note, but it can be named differently depending on which way we choose to look at it. The 3rd fret is G, 4th is a G sharp or A flat, the 5th fret we already know to be an A, next is A sharp or B flat, and on the 7th fret we have a B. Now, next is the other position where we move from one natural note to another. From a B, we go straight to a C, found on the 8th fret here. Next, we have C sharp or D flat, up another semitone to D, and up again to D sharp or E flat on the 11th fret. And this brings us neatly back to our octave E, found on the 12th fret like this. Moving on to the next string up, we start on the open A. On the 1st fret, we have an A sharp or B flat. The 2nd fret is a B, and remember that a B moves straight up a semitone to the note of C, which is found on the 3rd fret. Next is C sharp or D flat, and as we already know from tuning, fret 5 is a D. Up a semitone from D, we get D sharp or E flat. On the 7th fret, we find an E, and up a semitone from an E, we always get the note F, which happens to be right here on the 8th fret. Moving on, we get F sharp or G flat, then up to a G. The 11th fret is a G sharp or A flat, and one semitone up brings us back to an octave A. Now, I could go on and continue like this with the remaining 2 strings, but I want these sessions to develop you, not only as a bass player, but also as a musician. So far, I've already shared with you all the information you'll need to go on and name the remaining notes yourself. Give it a go. You just might surprise yourself. Now, don't panic. Just start from the open string, follow the rules we've covered, and apply what you've learnt so far. Good luck, and I'll see you soon.